Hey everybody, welcome to our Kickstarter webinar this month. Today we're going to be talking with Kaitlyn about Pledge Manager and all of the updates that have happened in the last year since it launched, as well as some future updates that we could potentially be seeing down the line. If you guys have any questions along the way, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We have some that were submitted during registration, so I have those ready for our Q&A session at the end. And then any questions that you guys post in the chat, I'll go ahead and copy those over and we'll get to them at the end as well. So everybody, welcome Kaitlyn. We're so excited to have you back. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Happy to be here. I am Kaitlyn. I work at Kickstarter and I work within the kind of creator tools realm of our product. So I am going to go today over I was here, I think, like almost a year ago, right? When we were,
About a year.
yeah, when we were like just kind of opening up our pledge manager to a very small beta group, and we had talked about that like pretty limited feature set that existed back a year ago. So I'm here to kind of do a refresh and share some of the more interesting elements that we've added to the pledge manager for the publishing realm, and then also just like answer questions, take questions, I think, and take feedback. Like the pledge manager has been improved and shaped essentially by creator feedback from people like you all. So the more information that I have about the gaps that exist for you, the better, because then we can improve it. So I'm going to share my screen and go through a few changes that we have made and highlight some things, and then we'll get into questions. And like Amanda said, feel free to drop those in the chat, um, and we'll kind of go from there.
Awesome. I'm excited. I know over the last year, like I've even seen some of the changes. So I'm really excited to get like a breakdown of all of those and see them like all come together. Especially for publishing, because I definitely think like there were some nuances in there in the early stages that I was like, oh, when you guys start adding more features to it, I think it's going to be great.
Totally. Yeah, and we, started with like a limited feature set that's just been expanding over time. Can you see my screen, Amanda?
Yes, yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Um, okay, so just to kind of like, I'm not sure exactly where everybody's kind of experience level is with pledge managers, but when I talk about pledge management, at least what I'm referring to is kind of like that suite of post-campaign tools that you use to collect backer information, to finalize orders, to continue to fundraise, to gather shipping details, and really just like get everything that you need to transition your campaign from manufacturing into fulfillment, and make sure that all that post-campaign action can be a success, because ultimately we all know that like the campaign is only the beginning of the journey that exists. And for a long time, Kickstarter had such a gap in that post-campaign experience of being able to effectively support creators. And has been a big goal of ours. And will continue to be to add to our post-campaign feature set. So when I'm kind of thinking about pledge management, um, I'm thinking about these four areas. So we have the ability to collect more money from your backers. So offering your backers upgrades and add-ons, and then continuing to be able to capture new backers during that pledge manager phase, collecting the data that you need from surveys. So getting shipping addresses, any item variants that you need, any general like reward questions, all of that is available in the survey tool. The ability to collect shipping funds. So people obviously have like a wide variety of practices that they follow in the realm of shipping. Sometimes people prefer to collect shipping at Pledge. Sometimes they prefer to collect it in the Pledge Manager. Um, you can do both of those things within Kickstarter, and then collecting taxes. So we currently have US, Canada, the EU, and the UK sales tax or VAT collection in the Pledge Manager. So I'm going to talk about a few elements that have been added to the Pledge Manager. Since I was last here, there's been so many changes, and Kickstarter keeps like a pretty up-to-date release note section of our website related to pledge management, where we're kind of posting updates as they happen. So I'm going to highlight a few things. This is not all of the changes that have been made since I was here, but I think some of the more like exciting or interesting or relevant ones that really have strengthened the pledge management offering. So one of those is just like enhanced data filtering and segmentation. All of the actions that your backers can take in the pledge manager is obviously like only as good as the ways that you can access that data. So we have really enhanced the filters that you can use on the backer report, the ways that you can save groups of backers. All of that is accessible in the backer report after you've used the pledge manager. Um, Also, just like more actions that you can take on your backers, and segments of your backers, like kind of whatever you need. Here, I'm just taking an action in this screenshot on a single backer, but you can do this in whatever groups and segments and views that you need. Um, a few of the actions that have been added, the ability to add tracking numbers to your backers' orders. This is a way to do it manually, but I'll speak about a way to do that more automatically in a bit. We're also in the next, probably today, I guess, by the end of this week, releasing the ability to add multiple tracking numbers to a backer in the case that your backers have, multiple shipments as a part of their order. The ability to send digital downloads. Right now, our pledge manager just has the ability to send codes, but in the next week, you'll have the ability to send actual files here. So I'll talk about that a little bit. That's a sneak peek coming soon. And then you have the ability to add free items to your backers' orders. I saw some questions in the FAQs doc that you had shared, Amanda, around just like the best way to manage stretch goals or rewarding backers. And this tool will allow you to create a segment of backers and add whatever items you need to their order. You can do that before you open the pledge manager so that those backers can see those items reflected in their checkout. Or you can really do it at any time if it's helpful to maintain like an accurate list of SKUs for fulfillment, for example, on a backer's order. So these are just a few of those new actions that you can take on a backer's order. I also saw some questions about just like the ability to message groups of backers. So here you see like at the top, you can obviously always message all of your backers, but as you build segments, you also have the ability to just message segments of those backers as well.
Quick question on that
Sure.
previous slide. The ability to like add tracking, send digital downloads, add new free items, is that only available if they utilize Pledge Manager, or are those filters and actions still available if they choose like the send survey only option?
These are available for Pledge Manager users. You can add for anybody can add free items because we know that people want to add those items like before they send out their Pledge Manager often so that their backers are seeing an accurate reflection in their checkout. But these are for, folks who are fulfilling using Kickstarter's tools.
Okay.
And then we are quickly expanding the integrations that we offer with fulfillment partners. So we know that like having to export like so many different files and share those files with your fulfillment partners and then make sure you've got everybody and manually upload tracking numbers, like all of that is obviously a major hassle. And the more that we can be directly connected with the fulfillment partners that you're using, the easier that process becomes. And then the more that we can collect data back from those fulfillment partners and share that with backers, primarily tracking numbers. So we have recently introduced the ability to sync orders to ShipStation, which we know is a common fulfillment partner, particularly in the publishing space. So this will allow you to connect directly to ShipStation, have all of your orders automatically ported over there, and then as tracking numbers are added to those orders, we would automatically receive those tracking numbers and display them to backers. So this is, just one of those fulfillment partners. Obviously, like there are many that creators use that we are chipping away at over time, but we know this is like very important to people to make that process much smoother. So this is just like what's available now, but more coming.
Perfect.
Um, and one enhancement that we made is the ability to have, I'm glad that you use ShipStation and that it's helpful. The ability to have just like editable, ongoing access to your Pledge Manager settings. A lot of the improvements that we have made to the Pledge Manager over the last year have all been like with giving creators more flexibility in mind. So now you send out your Pledge Manager, you're able to more um, to manage like quantities of items that you're offering, to turn on or off the ability to have new backers come into your Pledge Manager. And we have, kind of a change log that's available to you so that you can see, especially if you have like multiple collaborators in your projects, you can see as things are changed. We know often like there's so much that goes into configuring your post-campaign tool. So maybe you've like configured the wrong shipping rates for Italy and you figure that out and you want to change that. Like now, nothing that you do is locked in for all of your backers. You can go back in and make whatever changes that you need. So we have found that like this is very helpful. And then we're also displaying this change log so that you can view those changes over time.
Question on editing things. So if Pledge Manager has already gone out and you change something, is that only for any new backers coming into it moving forward, or does it like retroactively adjust previous Pledge Manager fulfillment? Who's fulfilled?
So, so for things like if you're changing a shipping rate, for example, it's not going to go back to somebody who has already, in the example of like someone back who is based in Italy, it's not going to go back and like automatically refund or recharge somebody who has already gone through, but it will apply to all ongoing orders and obviously things like quantities of add-ons or rewards or like new add-ons and rewards. Those are available to everyone who goes through. But it's not going to like retroactively adjust amounts charged to backers. It will be forward-looking.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, we know, especially in the world of publishing, you are very often sending ebooks or audiobooks or, many files that are attached to many different rewards or many different SKUs in your projects. And so we are expanding our digital like distribution to include files and not just codes. So this is coming next week. We're QAing it today. So you'll have the ability to upload whatever files that you need, and then you'll be able to decide if you want to send those to your backers automatically. So you can just say like, this is the file that is assigned to this item or this SKU. And so I want that automatically delivered to all of these backers. Or you'll have the ability to do it manually. So if you want to, go into your backer report and manually send files for whatever reason, you'll also be able to do that. So like I said, that's a sneak peek coming next week and should hopefully like reduce a lot of the usage of external tools. And this will be a new one. So as folks in your ecosystem use it, Amanda, like feel free to share feedback with us. This is just like the starting place. And we'll be continuing to enhance it over time.
Yeah, I think this is amazing. I mean, that's definitely probably one of the top like post campaign questions that we get is how do I fulfill my digital? And it's always, you can use BookFunnel or set up a Google Drive or do this or do that. So I think it's amazing that they can do it in here. Because I think a lot of the times that was like the assumption for a lot of creators going into it. And then they kind of found out later that no, you do have to do extra steps. So I think this is amazing. I'm super excited to see this one roll out.
Yeah, and I don't have examples here in my, very basic screenshots, but and these are also from our staging platform. So I'm seeing that like there's a weird button that will obviously look better. But there are, you'll be able to see like the date that a backer downloaded the file. Like there'll just be so much better tracking all in one place. You'll also like be able to replace a file if for whatever reason you sent one out and then you realize like, oh, there was a typo in that book and I have a new version that I'd like the next people to get access to. There's a lot of functionality in here that I think will be useful. So this is, as I mentioned, coming shortly
Soon.
next
Yes.
week. Um,
Question on like, so hypothetically, you sent it out on the backer side when they go to access this. Is this something that's like always there and available? So if they're like, oh, I don't want to do that right now, and they come back later, they can go back to it and download it at any time.
Yeah, so your
Okay.
backer will receive a notification when these are sent, but these files will be hosted along with any instructions that you use to accompany them.
Okay.
Those will be hosted on the backer's like backing details page where they see, all the receipts for their items. It's where they are sent to get to the pledge manager in the first place. So it's kind of like their hub of all of the information that they need about your campaign. This will always live there so they can revisit it as needed.
Okay. So then if you do have to like swap a file, you can just say, hey, everybody, the updated file is in there, and they can just go click and that would be the one available.
Exactly. So they could go, yeah, you would say, like, hey, just so everybody knows, like, the last file I sent is great. I've made a few adjustments. The next time you go and download the file from us, that'll be available there.
Sweet.
Um, so yeah, this is one that we're super excited about. It's been a long time coming, as you've said on Kickstarter, but finally here. Um, and yeah, those were like the pieces I wanted to highlight. I think I also just included, yeah, just like a mention that we also recently released the ability to do polls. Again, like a long time request from creators, but now you can add polls to updates. You can use that in pre-launch or during your campaign if there are questions that you want to know from your backers, or if you want to use these to kind of like build excitement. Leading up to your campaign or as you're making decisions about stretch goals and things like that. No longer do you have to like troll through
Tons
all
of
of your
comments.
comments and try to collate responses. Um, these are this is available now. So try it out on your next project.
I love that. And I definitely think it's like a step in the direction like of supporting stretch goals, because I know technically stretch goals aren't like built into the platform. It was kind of something that like creators started doing and it just took off and now it's like the norm. But it definitely is, especially when you have like comments on the update and then some people go comment in comments and you're always trying to like tally them up, and then it's like, when does it end, right? When you send the next one, you say this is the winner, but then people will post on that one, well, I want blue, I want pink, I want this, and it's like, oh well, we
Totally.
already ended that. I love this feature. This is so awesome, and I cannot wait to tell our Kickstarter team about it, and they're probably going to this is out right now, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, okay, we're going to start using this immediately. I'm so excited.
Yeah, send your first poll today. Yeah, and the speaking of stretch goals, this is on our list to work on later in the year. We know that obviously people use stretch goals in like such a variety of ways, and so much of that puts a lot of manual burden on creators. And so this is one that I'll be coming back to you, Amanda, on for um, some design feedback, like as we're kind of figuring out where we're going to start with building a more formal stretch goal product to both like help you market those items or those goals and then also help you like track those items so that it's not so manual. This is on our list for later in the year. So if
Yeah, that's
anybody has
amazing.
any thoughts on that, please share with me.
Yeah, I was to say everybody in the chat right now is super excited about that. I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing on Kickstarter since payment plans. Because it's just so widely spread. And if you guys need, you know, ideas on the forefront or, the most common way that they're laid out and how they're used and stuff, let me know. Because we do them for every single campaign type of thing. But that is phenomenal. Like people are gonna die when they realize that that's coming. Because it is one of those where it's like, even with our fulfillment, we're like, everybody from this tier to here gets this, and then everybody on the campaign gets this, and then all these people and da da da. And it's so hard, especially when they're physical. to figure out like who's supposed to get what. And you always have like, I was supposed to get this and I didn't. And like the follow-up and the customer service on it is just insane. That
Totally.
is very exciting. I cannot wait to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah. And like we know, there's a lot of different ways that people use um free items or those style of incentives, which obviously like stretch goals can be a variety of things.
Yeah.
Um, but so we have like that free item tool that still requires like a lot of manual work for you to say like, okay, I have to now create a segment of all of these backers and add these things. Like that is, now an option that you have, which is great, but it's not like our goal for how we move that forward and also like help you use those stretch goals to be available and visible more publicly rather than, like hidden in the story in a new image that you had to generate like last minute. So obviously, like, I think the opportunities there are so endless, and we're really excited to get that more like easy to use and easy to manage, and also help you like use it to boost pledges on your campaigns.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. One thing I just realized too with the ad free items, that's a great way for like the early bird. So if you're like the first 100 people to back get a free, pin or a bonus item, that's always been another one, especially when like, if there's like drop pledges or things like that, like how do you figure out who those 100 were? And that's a great way to be able to utilize that for early birds as well without it being such a manual process.
Totally. And like here you can you can filter like when you're adding free items, you can filter your backer report by like pledge date. So you could say, okay, anyone who pledged in the first day, or you can filter it by reward if you had an early bird reward. You can filter by a list of backer email addresses if you're trying to offer a free item to folks on like your newsletter list or whatever it might be. So
Oh,
um
wow.
yeah, that's like you can match, obviously like people have so many email addresses and matching email addresses is not always the most elegant solution, but there are now we're also adding a filter that should be out this week also, adding a filter that's just not captured here where you'll be able to filter by anybody who was a pre-launch follower of yours or anybody who had backed a previous campaign of yours, so that way you can use that free item incentive as well if that's a
Oh,
tactic
wow.
that you take.
That's amazing. Holy crap. I think like anything when it comes to like identifying followers, right? Because then like once they're a backer, but then if that like translation, like we know how many people continued over, but it's you never know which ones are. That's amazing. That's really
Yeah,
cool. And I think it would work really well too for we do a lot of strategy regarding like the secret tiers for Patreon, but then that's another way to be able to say anybody from Patreon, even if they missed the link or didn't use it, you can line that up and then go back to your Patreon members only and say, hey, here's your extra thing
exactly.
that I promised you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and like, there may be differences between somebody's like Kickstarter email address and their Patreon email address, but that's at least a way where you can start. Like you can say
Yeah.
and then it'll tell you like, where that didn't match exactly. Um, are there so I think like we've covered obviously what's happening in the world of pledge management. I think like one of the things that we're so excited about, and there's so much more work to be done in the world, in the post-campaign world, that we are always going to be continuing to build. We're also so excited, as we've been talking about, like there's so many other opportunities for us to support creators just beyond the world of those post-campaign actions. We've talked about stretch goals, talking about pre-launch. Like there's so many areas that we're really, excited to continue to dig into. Um, are there any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some questions from the registration that we can roll through. And then anybody in the chat, if you guys have questions about any of this, go ahead and drop them now and we'll get to those as well. I think the first one was um, to be able to message people with selected reward tiers, but it sounds like for the digital rewards, but that has been moved to that action now with Pledge Manager. So I think we covered that one. This is a question that isn't really Pledge Manager, but I think I can help. So somebody asked that they've seen multiple Kickstarters list fulfillment will be completed several months in advance. How far out is appropriate to lists, and should they not order any of the books until they have actual orders. So it is really hard to gauge, like, you don't know how many books you're going to need until your Kickstarter runs. And it also depends on where you're ordering your books and what your minimum order counts are. So every campaign is going to be different. There's lots of campaigns where if you're ordering domestically, you can order 10, 15, 20, 50, 100. So in those instances, if you know roughly how much you're going to do on a campaign and you've done them before, you could probably gauge how many books you need to order. If you're doing overseas, minimum order quantities are typically higher. It's usually about 250 per title. So we usually recommend doing your ordering post campaign, unless like, no matter what I do on the Kickstarter, I know I'm going to order 500 because you're going to use for signings or events or, additional quantities outside of that. So I really think it depends on what you're able to do prior or post. And the best way to do that is just making sure that like your FAQs align with targeted enhanced dates. So if you are going to order post campaign, setting those expectations of it's going to take me a month or 2 months or 3 months to get these in hands, plus the time to fulfill. So post campaign, it'll be in 4 months, obviously leave caveats to delays pending, because you never know what's going to happen with, shipping and customs and just things like that. If you are ordering them in advance, then you can use like limited quantity. So if you're like, I only have 100 of these books available, or I only have 250 of them, you can always limit those. If you do order them in advance, or leave it open if you know that you can order another 100 without it being an issue, and then just roll out your fulfillment after that. And then let's see. One question that I think has come up. Let's see, JP, I'm fairly new to Kickstarter and just wanted to know your top tips for running a successful campaign. I would say, so on the influence side, we do campaign management. We've ran, I think it's like 60 campaigns over the last, I think like 18 months, 2 years now. One of the biggest things is your follower count. So like pre-launch marketing is probably one of the most crucial steps. Typically, you can gauge based on how many followers you have, how many will convert to backers when you click that button and they get the email from Kickstarter, because that's usually the number one driver to bring them back to the platform. We see anywhere from 20 to 25% up to 45% conversion, depending on your current audience engagement. So what are your current engagements on your newsletters and your socials already? So if you have 100 followers when you launch and 30% of those convert, that's about 30 people. And is that enough for you to hit your goal? Is it enough for you to surpass your goal based on like the pricing of your tiers? So I would say the number one thing that we push for anybody that we work with is your pre-launch period, and making sure that you have all of your marketing cadences set up, running pre-launch ads so your ads can learn and start to convert prior to going live. And then I think one of the other things is coordinating like backer swaps with other creators. Those tend to drive a ton of existing Kickstarter backers to your platform, where converting them is much easier because it's not somebody new who has like created an account or sign up or things like that. So I would say pre-launch followers, number one. I wouldn't set like, this is the date that we're going to go live until you get closer to, and you have your followers up. So that way, if you need to delay launching a little bit, you have that wiggle room without anybody being like, oh, you were supposed to launch on the 30th and you didn't, and just continue to grow your followers and then launch once you know that you have enough to fund that first day. Okay. And then you're welcome. One question that I know that like has come up a lot, especially in publishing, is regarding taxes. So I know one of the benefits is the collection and remitting of taxes, but I know for authors specifically, there's thresholds where they don't have to remit taxes unless they hit a certain sales amount in each individual state. And most of the time, I'm not super familiar, but from what I've heard, I think it's Nexus, and it's like in the realm of like a few 100,000 or a couple 100,000 before they have to remit those. And I know for authors, that's being collected either way. Is there any settings or changes or things like that where that can be maybe controlled or opted out of if it's something that because I think one of the biggest things is they don't want to charge people taxes if it's something that they wouldn't have had to do if they were like selling directly.
Yeah, I totally hear that and understand that feedback. So Kickstarter operates in the United States as something that's called a marketplace facilitator, which is the same way that like Etsy or Amazon is classified, right? Which is like a government requirement for us to operate in that way, which means that we have to collect tax based on where Kickstarter has Nexus, not where a creator has Nexus. So we do that in the United States and in Canada. Um, and we presently have a requirement to collect in the EU and the UK that we are introducing more flexibility on. We do we are like very careful about the way that we collect. We collect taxes on the item level. We know that books often have discounted tax rates, and so our approach really makes sure that, every item is classified so that we're assessing those discounted rates. We're not just like assessing blanket rates. So yeah, I know that that's like people will often prefer to collect based on their own personal nexus. That's not a way that Kickstarter can unfortunately operate. Um, it's not like, a choice that we had made without the considerations of what we're required to do. Um, that being said, yeah, I think like our item-based approach really tries to be thoughtful about exactly like what the item is so that we're assessing the accurate tax rates, which is really relevant in publishing, particularly when it comes to like EU and UK taxes. And then we're also working on um, increasing the back making sure that backers have the expectation and the understanding that taxes will be charged, and that's not a reflection of like the creator's choice or the creator's action, and that's like a Kickstarter enforcement and a Kickstarter responsibility. So we're testing different ways to kind of improve, because I know that um a lot of that frustration comes from like a backer saying, "Hey, why do I have to pay taxes? I used to back campaigns. I never have had to pay taxes before." And so we're also working on making sure that it's very clear to backers, and not in a way that will, impact your conversion, but that they start to understand that this is just like a standard practice required of marketplaces, the same way when you buy something off of Amazon, it's not relevant where like those sellers have Nexus, but the Amazon is assessing those taxes. So that's also one area that we're paying particular attention to, is trying to help backers understand that that's like a Kickstarter decision, and kind of go from there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have one question in the chat. What would be the furthest out from publication date to launch campaign? So for pre-launch, we typically recommend no less than 30 days prior to launch, but I would say depending on your existing audience and the engagement, anywhere from 30 to 90 days is usually a good ramp up period, just depending on how often you already, send out to your newsletter and things like that, marketing budget behind ads, your engagement on social media, and just how long it would take for you to really get that word out and start spreading the awareness. I would say up to 6 months, but there is a little bit of a caveat where depending on how long you're in pre-launch, and obviously, especially as an author, you have other promotions going on, right? You have a book release, you have a signing, you have all these things, is the people who followed you 6, 8, 9 a year ago, their interest and the rate that they will convert that far down the road is going to be less. So your conversion rates may suffer if you're in pre-launch for too long, especially if it's like a backer audience, right? Like there's other campaigns, they bought stuff, the money that they were going to spend probably has been spent somewhere else. So there is kind of like that middle ground, but I would say no less than 30, 60 to 90 if you need the extra time is kind of like the rough average that we do for our campaigns. Yeah, Jen, you're right. There's no limit on how long you can be in pre-launch for. And that new feature that came out where you can send a backer update or a follower update to your followers while you're in pre-launch is massive. If you're not using it, I highly recommend. We use them to give them updates as we're leading up to going live. Once you decide your official launch date, send an update letting them know, hey, we're going to launch on the 30th, whatever it may be. But keeping them engaged during pre-launch is going to be the number one thing that you want to do if you're in pre-launch for longer. So I would definitely recommend that. And then trying to see what other questions we have. I know there were a few more about taxes. back to 2027. Yeah. So yeah. So if you do go into pre-launch and there are delays for any reason, the follower update is a great way to be able to communicate that, like, yeah, maybe we were planning to launch in June, but it's going to be January instead for whatever the reasons may be. And then what about from launch to pub date and delivery? So, campaigns can run, what is it, like 1 to 60 days? I believe is the max is 60 days for how long a campaign can be live, right? Oh, Kaitlyn, do you know that? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So up to 60 days. So it really depends on your strategy for while you're live. So every campaign will have like a lot of momentum the first, few days into a week. There is like a momentum plateau kind of in the middle, and then you see a rise again about the last 72 hours because of the urgency and the fact that it's closing very soon. So how long you're live really depends on how much marketing and strategy you have behind maintaining your mid-campaign momentum and making sure that the lull isn't too long, especially if you're doing like stretch goals and things like that, to be able to keep the engagement and people coming back to your campaign for a reason while you're live. So we typically run ours 24 to about 30-ish days. And we typically always launch on a Tuesday and end on a Friday night. And we usually just do like midnight Eastern. So time zone math is easy for people. They're like in another country, they're not like, oh, I thought you were ending at 8 p.m. And then they realize that, the 8 p.m. was a different time zone that you were referring to. Ending on a Friday is great because people get paid. So if there's anybody who throughout the campaign is like, oh, I really want to do that, but I have to wait till payday or something like that, it helps with the boost on the end. And then 24 to 30 days gives enough like pay periods in between, depending on like everybody's different pay schedules to get that in there. There are definitely campaigns where it makes sense to have them much longer. I know that I've noticed it like in film and games and things like that, where like a longer live period makes more sense. But I think if you're doing publishing, especially with like special editions and stuff, going too long, you tend to lose a little bit of that urgency. It also will give more of a window for people to potentially cancel or drop their pledges down. We always see a lot of, the comments are like after where something came up and life happened and the money had to go somewhere else and things like that. So you just want to balance not losing too much momentum with being live for too long, and then making sure you can keep the engagement up the whole time that you're live. And then delivery is really going to depend on how you're sourcing what you're selling. If you're doing everything domestically, the turn times on producing lower quantity items in the US is going to be much faster. If you're doing larger quantities and you decide to like go overseas, then production times are going to be longer, especially with shipping, because most everything overseas goes on a boat. So for our campaigns, we usually estimate, because most of our campaigns are printing overseas for their items. Digital items for the most part are usually fulfilled within a month of the campaign closing, unless it's like bonus content that didn't exist before and you're going to be writing it for some reason, or you're getting new artwork created that wasn't started. Those things have a longer lead time. Overseas, we usually do about 3 months from like production and on a boat and, getting into your hands and sorting through everything. So we usually rough estimate about 4 to 5 months from close to in hands, unless there's a reason to set a specific date on an item that will be done much later. Audiobooks, if you were raising money to have your audiobook and, the narrators are booked and, when their availability is, that might be 8 months down the road by the time it's, edited and fully ready to distribute. But I would say, as long as you set the expectations, it's whatever is necessary for you to make everything come to fruition based on what you're offering. Let's see, stretch goals. We already talked about, there's new features coming to incorporate stretch goals into the Kickstarter platform. Let's see. We talked about sharing tracking links within the platform as well, which is amazing. I did have a quick question. Is Pirate Ship on the list of integrations coming potentially soon? Because I know that's a big one, especially on the publishing side.
Yeah, it's not one that'll be coming in the next couple of months, but it is on our list. And I think like we track based on surveys what the top fulfillment partners is, and Pirate Ship is definitely in like the top 10. So yes, it is on our list, but not like, I can't promise it
Not soon.
Very quickly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Let's see. We talked about being able to fulfill digital rewards through the platform now. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions outside of what we've already answered. Mm. Oh, one quick question I had is in Pledge Manager, especially when you're assigning the categories for taxes, do you have any recommendations, especially when you have like bundles where it's like a book and an item and a paper product and an art and a something else, and there's so many different items going in there? Like, what's the best strategy for making sure that you're setting those up correctly if there isn't like a one-to-one for what the item is going to be?
Yeah, so I think this is an area that like we are working to improve because you know, right now the short answer to that is like the best thing that you can do is itemize your campaign your rewards as close to the items that you expect to actually ship as is possible. I think what's tricky right now is there's like you can't add more items into an existing reward in the post campaign period. So that's something that we're exploring and just like making sure that if you're like, oh, I said that this reward is going to be like one book, but it's actually going to be one physical book and one ebook, and how am I actually like reflecting that? Um, so that is, I think, like one area that we are working on is trying to make sure that you have the flexibility to like add items as needed post campaign. But I think as of right now, the best thing you can do is try to make the items contained in your reward as reflective of what you plan, what you know, and what you plan to actually ship as is possible.
Yeah, and that's what we typically recommend. Like when we build our rewards, if it's like whatever the bundle is and it's a bundle of swag items, like a swag pack, we always do them like line items. So it's like four bookmarks, three sticker sheets, individually, even though it is a swag pack. That way you can line item those things better. Same thing with like book bundles. You know what I mean? If you are like, I have the ebook and then I have the paperback, instead of doing like a bundle of you get the paperback and the ebook together, do those as line items. So the reward can be everything, but then the actual SKU items are all one by one.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that like, yeah, the more that you are also like breaking those down, should you like decide that you want to use weight-based shipping, the weights of each item are obviously really relevant to that process. So, like making sure that your items are as reflective. Obviously, like we know that things change over the course of time, but it particularly is relevant when we're talking about like charging taxes on books and things that we know have discounted codes. We really want to make sure that we have an accurate sense of items that can carry you through to fulfillment.
Yeah. Question if there's something that they're doing, because I know a lot of the times like they'll get really creative with things, with what they're offering. And a lot of the times it's not even like digital, it's not like an ebook, but it is name a character, join a Zoom party, things that don't really they have monetary value because you built it into the cost of your reward. But for things like that, I noticed when we were in there, I was like, I don't know what the Zoom party should be. So I was like, minus all of my physical, what was left over, it was $102 technically different. So we labeled it as that. But how would taxes work on something like that? Because obviously there's not really like codes, but you don't want to like not assign things that are part of your line items.
Totally. There are a couple of codes that are available there that are just get at like I think it's called not the technical term is like a non-tangible item. So something like, yeah, you're a character in the book, an autograph, like things that you wouldn't that aren't tangible items to tax. There are codes in that existing like shortlisted library that do reflect like the non-taxable value that's assigned to that. And we do take that
Okay.
into account when we calculate taxes, to ensure that like, the costs are assigned proportionally. Because we never want to like tax something that's not associated with any value that the
Okay, so the
creators.
non-tangible then would eliminate that from being taxed, essentially.
Correct.
Okay, cool. I saw that in there and I was like, I don't, when we first did it like a year ago, I was like, I don't want to click the wrong things, especially when it comes to
Totally.
taxes, because that's very scary. And I was like, sounds like it would be that, but like, I really hope this doesn't like get us in trouble later.
Yeah, no. And I think like, overall, like learning we're all taxing in crowdfunding is new to everybody
Mhm.
in the way that Kickstarter is implementing it. And so I think like there is some nuance to that stuff that we try to make as easy as possible, but know that yeah, it's like a learning curve for everybody, and we're never like assessing more tax than should be charged or anything like that. We're like very, very diligent about making sure.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, like getting a thank you is a great example of something where um you might like say that this costs more or this is like an added value as a part of that reward, but it's not like a taxable item. So that there are definitely codes in there to account for that, and that's definitely like something to make sure you're categorizing too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things like, add you to the backer acknowledgments, you get a numbered
Exactly.
copy, things like that, that, like you said, just it's, kind of
It's
like,
not a taxable, yeah,
yeah.
but it is like, yeah, it is generating value, obviously for your backers, and that's like one of the reasons why you do it. And there are many things like that within the world of Kickstarter, like your name on the restaurant's wall, like all that, where it's not taxed, but it is like a part of that value. And so yeah, like I mentioned, we have like a very thoughtful item cat and we understand that it's like not everybody's favorite thing to have to categorize all of their items, but we do only do it so that we can ensure that we are calculating accurate tax and like never charging your backer more tax than they should be charged,
Right.
particularly when like the world of Kickstarter has so many of those things that are meant to be like magical or fun, but they're not taxed.
Right. It's not going to be like, oh, well, you raised this much and you only claimed this much and, things like that. Like there's reasons for it, which would fall under that category. Because I think a lot of the times that how much I'm paying in taxes and how much I raise, it's like, if this doesn't make sense, what do I do? You know what I mean? Because you don't want to like raise red flags, but there are so many of those like value adds that can't be taxed. Um, let's see. Um, Question on when you share the tracking within Kickstarter once that comes out. Obviously, my assumption would be the ones that are integrated with like ShipStation would when the backer opens up their pledge manager and they view that, would it then show like shipped and like the updated stages, or is it just the ability for them to like click on it and like go to the carrier to see those updates?
Yeah, so oh yeah, I saw that question, the FAQs around like how do we make the process of assigning tracking numbers feel less manual? And I think a lot of that comes down to us being able to be connected to your fulfillment partners, such
Mm-hmm.
that when you ship something, we get that tracking number back as a result of that connection, right? And when we get that tracking number back, we apply like we change the status so that there's like the fulfillment status on the order would change to reflect the receipt of that tracking number,
Okay.
in the case where that integration exists. Obviously, like for that to be applicable to most people, we need to expand the number of fulfillment partners that we're connected with, which is something we'll be doing.
Okay. But if they're putting in like tracking manually for any reason, it wouldn't then pull in those statuses. It would just provide them with like the tracking information.
If you upload a tracking number manually, does it automatically? Let me check on that. I don't know the
Okay.
answer to that off the top of my head. I believe it does change the status, um, but I'm not 100% sure. So let me check.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Question on like the statuses and the stages. So I know there's like the like in progress fulfilled. Is there I don't know if this is necessarily like pledge manager specifically, but is there like potential plans in the future where you can say like digital is fulfilled and like maybe like certain rewards are fulfilled and these are in progress versus like overarching statuses? Because I know a lot of the times we get creators who are like worried about changing it because they're like, well, I fulfilled everything, but like the ebook just isn't done yet because it was a future thing or it's an early copy of a release that's in 2027 or things like that. And I think some of those statuses people hesitate because they don't want to say it's done if it's not done. Is there a way to like potentially maybe like line item that better in the future?
Yeah, we're working on the idea that like a partially fulfilled status essentially. with the addition of like the idea of packing groups where you could set up your SKUs into different groups and then use those packing groups to send specific data to your fulfillment partners. So yes, we are working on that. Like the concept of basically like some pieces of this order are fulfilled while other pieces of this order are not.
Okay.
And that's something that will be coming this year.
Oh, that's amazing. Because we even had one like we did one of our campaigns where we did like an ornament and it got shipped out like before everything was even, ordered and things like that because we wanted them to get it for Christmas, but there was like no way to identify that. Um, and then especially I know a lot of the times, um, especially when you're ordering like overseas or like high quantity items, right? You may get these books and these things done, and you might be able to like batch ship those. Like everybody who didn't get this one item, I can ship them now, and then the next like, kind of waves and phases and things like
Totally.
that. So I think that'll be super awesome because I know it's always like I don't know where we're at.
Yeah, and that's that's like one of the reasons why I say I'm not 100% sure if like the addition of a tracking number changes that status because that's like many creators, depending on the timing of your manufacturing or whatever's going on, like you want to get an ornament out early, like will not necessarily ship everything. And that's one of the reasons why we'll have the ability to do multiple tracking numbers, which we have is going out this week. And so then, yeah, there's kind of like the concept that there's both like the creator ability to say, oh, I want to manually adjust this to be partially fulfilled. And then there's our ability to like, based on the information we receive from fulfillment partners, be able to dictate that ourselves. And that's like, we're working on both of those things so that um, we always want like your fulfillment partner to be partners in many cases to be the place where you're actually like managing what's being shipped, but we want to be able to reflect that accurately for data management and for backer visibility. And so there's obviously a lot of nuance in many of these cases that we're working on.
Awesome. Let's see. I think the rest of these we answered. Yeah, I think that's great. Does anybody else in the chat have any last questions for Kaitlyn before we wrap everything up? Awesome. Well, amazing, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Kaitlyn. This was probably one of my favorite webinars that we've done so far. I feel like there are so many exciting things coming with Pledge Manager and with the platform in general. I think this is going to be like a massive year for what Kickstarter will look like come 2027. So I cannot wait for all the updates.
Yeah, we're really excited. And like I said, so much of our ability to build things that work for you depends on like a mutual relationship and you guys sharing feedback with us. So, I there's a general email that's just like pledge management at kickstarter.com, which is an inbox that I keep an eye on. So if you have any particular questions after this session or feedback about things that you'd like to see incorporated in Kickstarter, like, that's feedback from creators is the origin of everything that we do essentially. So feel free to share anything more specific or any ideas that have come to you during this meeting. And like I said, Amanda, as I dig into um, productizing stretch goals more, I'll be hitting you up for
Yes.
feedback that can reflect, this community as well.
No, that's very, very exciting. You said it was pledge management at kickstarter.com, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I see
Okay, perfect.
Amanda just popped it in there. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. And then I know there's also the survey will pop up while you're inside of the platform. It's like a little tab on the right hand side to give feedback as well. That's like one of my favorite things.
Yes, I look at those every day. We see the good, the bad, the ugly in there. So we love to hear it all. Yeah, we have a lot of, and I'm sure many of you have like received surveys from our research team. And yeah, I hope, we're really excited about digital downloads, particularly for like so many of you all who share ebooks and things like that. Um, and yeah, we'll just hope that this year, we're continuing to deliver things that make all of your lives easier.
I'm excited. I think everything you've shared so far definitely does. And I think everything to come is going to be like light years ahead of where we were a year ago. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's going to be really awesome.
awesome. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.